Live. This is One for the Record. I'm Diana, and today is July 7th, 2012. It is Saturday, late evening. And sorry about the late evening, but I had to have my internet turned back on because somehow there was some kind of mistake somewhere. But I want to thank the people in the Philippines. Hello, Philippines. Thank you for turning my internet on, because I do have an extension. And here's your update for today. We will be listening to the Dr. DEAGLE NutriMedical report. And let me give you this one tidbit of information. It's going to be an extended program. I'm just going to cut into the NutriMedical report wherever it's at right now. But they're running a commercial off of the Genesis Network, and we have for December 21st, 2012, 166 days, 7 hours, and 31 minutes. Alrighty then, let's see.
Number4u.com.
Here we go. Dr. DEAGLE, you don't have to watch me. I'm going to blink out the camera.
John,
Listen
what's the latest
to the show.
news as to what's happening worldwide? Of course, we talked about the insane temperatures that are being broken all across the United States now, except here on the coast of California, where we've actually, the last few days, had below normal temperatures. It's been in the low 60s until today. Finally, the day the weather broke, but it's been moderately normal, low 60s, high 60s. On warm days, in the mid-70s, where I'm in Vista, California. It's insanely hot, which means crop failures all across a good part of the food belt of the United States is being exposed to extremely shocking drought, as well as radiation hazard from ultraviolet light and now extreme heat.
Well, for the first time, we're seeing mainstream media come close to telling the truth. They're saying that the Atlantic current has slowed down, creating a blocking mechanism that's preventing our normal weather patterns from moving from west to east with wind and precipitation like they always do. If we get half our harvest of grains, corn, wheat, rice, soybeans, spelt, oats, and so forth, if we get half our harvest, we'll be doing good. That's where we are right now, Dr. Bill.
Yeah, that means we're in a Joseph type of famine. And what do you see happening there, too, climatologically, earthquakes, volcanoes, and whatever else is going on?
Well, I've been surprised that the earthquakes have remained at a relatively low level. We did have a lot around the 11th of April, and since then, before then, we were running about 400 earthquakes above 2.5 magnitude a week, and since the 11th of April, we were running about 200. So we've somehow, the earthquakes have dropped off precipitously, which to me means that there's going to be a building of energy, and when the next batch hits, there's bound to be an 8 or a 9 that we need to contend with.
In other words, it's built up rock energy, like pulling back on a crossbow before the crossbow finally releases when the right coronal mass ejection hit, or apogee and perigee of the sun, or syzygy we call it, and the moon, that happens where the moon is closer to the earth, or there's alignment. All these factors could trigger off a very major quake.
We just had the summer solstice, and we've just had the aphelion, which is where the earth is the furthest away from the sun.
Right,
and
which is good in a way, because,
the next thing to come is the equinox, which would be in September.
Right, so the CME, there's one heading toward us, and they tend to trigger off earthquakes as well. How big? That's an M class. What's likely to happen? Is that a direct or glancing blow?
It's going to be a glancing blow, but it's going to be a glancing blow in the northern hemisphere, because the ecliptic is, at 23 degrees or something, because we just had the summer solstice.
Right.
And so we're expecting some power line sags and surges, and of course the power lines are already at the breaking point because of the demand for air conditioning. And usually what the power plant operators will do is they'll draw back on the amount of voltage because they don't want the additional current from the CME to be surging through their lines. But there's no way this time that they can draw back on that because they have such a demand for air conditioning.
Right, so in other words, what you're saying is the induced current will actually blow out step-down transformers across the power lines, and that we're going to lose equipment, in other words, because of the CME coming in while the power lines are near maximum power capability.
I think that's a direct possibility, and also the CMA will induce ground currents, which can blow out those diesel generators that nuclear power plants keep in reserve. And that's happened before when the CME is hit. So that takes out their backup power. By the way, did you see where the UPS, the uninterruptible power supply for reactor 4 at Fukushima, shorted out or failed or something? And so what the workers did, was they just took it out of the loop, and so now they're running line power directly into. They're not running condition power into the pumps that keep the water circulating. And
exactly. Yeah, we talked about that with that happened on Sunday because their pumps had failed. They said the uninterrupted power supply failed, and they reconnected it on Sunday. It's a temporary fix. The temperature was rising, so that by 4 a.m. Japanese Standard Time, they would hit critical temperatures, so those fuel rod assemblies would explode. 1,535 of them. If only 10% blew, it would raise the radiation level by 30 times to 100 times the level that were released in March of last year and onward. So what we're facing is an ecological catastrophe that is going to happen very soon. My guess is it's going to happen within weeks to months rather than years. It's probably going to happen within the next, I would say, 6 to 8 weeks. And when that happens, the massive radiation will cause an evacuation in Japan. It will further collapse the Japanese economy that's teetering and pull back on any credit that they're going to develop to back up the Europeans, which are scrambling the Titanic deck chairs. But everybody should know that Europe is toast. And, of course, Obama knows this. He's already made promises to the European central banks and so on. So all these things are tied together. But I think the straw that's going to break the the camel's back isn't going to be a Mideast war so much as a combination of three things: the collapse of Japan, the technical closure to the Strait of Hormuz, which now that they're getting only half the fuel out, and the almost certain push to have special forces and start an air incursion into Syria and Iran, when the Russians are arming them now with an S-400 system, which is called the HK-17 system the Russians co-developed with the Chinese. So we're looking at some very, very dangerous times here. In the midst of America overheated this summer with extreme weather and a very serious likelihood around the world of crop failures worldwide. So worldwide crop failures, famine, combined with war and economic collapse in Japan and Europe, it's going to be a very, very nasty fall.
Yeah, the crops failed. The corn crop especially failed in Argentina and Brazil. And, of course, it's failing here in the United States because when they show the pictures on the television, on the news bites, it's knee-high instead of shoulder high or head high. And the only people that are getting good corn are the ones that have had rain, and those are the people in Minnesota and the upper part of Michigan. And so it's the far northern states in the Corn Belt that are getting it, and the rest of the Corn Belt is not getting rain at all in any significant amount.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it, that we have this tremendous heat, but no rain, not a proper rain distribution. John, what is happening militarily going on in the Middle East, and what's going on here in terms of America? Because I've got some reports out, and I don't want to say the source of it, but it reports that there was a truck that fell over with some signs in it that talks about the signs and the sources of information suggest that we're looking toward a October surprise of a bank holiday, probably caused by a collapse of Europe, a collapse of Japan with the ecological catastrophe, and also a planned incursion into Syria that will almost certainly precipitate a technical, if not complete, closure of the Strait of Hormuz. That the legislature in Iran has now passed a bill, and they don't even need to put gunships in the area. All they need to do is just call the insurance carrier in London and say, by the way, we have technically closed the Strait of Hormuz.
That's right. That's right.
And it's over.
Well, the Russians for decades have loved to use proxies to do their dirty work. The Cubans all over Africa, the Vietnamese and Vietnam against us. And they'll be using proxies once again involving the Iranians and the Syrians to do their dirty work, while they can give the public appearance of having clean hands.
Right.
Nothing can be further from the truth.
Yeah, the Russians are not our friends, and neither are the Chinese, and we need to get a reality check in terms of what's going on in the future. Back in a moment.
Well, we're back. This is the Dr. DEAGLE's NutriMedical report, and it is from Friday, yesterday. It was from yesterday, and you don't need to watch this show. You can listen to it like a radio program, because that's what it is, actually. But here is your news update so far in between the commercials. The Extinction Protocol 2012 and beyond. We're waiting right now for that to come up. Yes, we are very slow. Obviously, we're having some kind of technical difficulties. Let me lower this. Here we go. It's so slow that my face is freezing on the video. Alrighty, sweltering U.S. heat wave claims 30 lives. My goodness. This is out of Washington, St. Louis. Also, let's see what else. Where else is this out of? Suffolk Falls, South Dakota, and some other states. Yes. Chaos in skies over Britain. Forecasters describe horrific summer as the worst since records began. This is coming out of the United Kingdom today. Scroll down, see what else we have on the Extinction Protocol 2012 while we're waiting on the commercial. And yes, I hear that little bit of buzzing. That's coming over the internet. That's my connection. It's not the speakers. 5.1 magnitude earthquake strikes Dominican Republic. Oh my goodness. And there's a med school out there I was going to finish my med program with. What's going on here? That was Saturday. Today. New Zealand's North Island shaken by another earthquake, and that was a 5.7 quake. Geologists warn China's dam building frenzy in seismically active regions is putting millions at risk. Yeah, like anyone cares. You see what I'm saying? Put your nuclear plants, put your dams where they don't belong, put everyone at risk. Is that the Agenda 21? And don't think you're not a part of it, you elite. See if we can scroll this down a little more. Also today, Indonesia, during our recent expedition to Krakatoa volcano. No longer see the lava dome active during February-May this year. Activity still strong at ELHIERO. That's the Canary Islands. climate, and they're showing very high. I think it's coming from Fukushima. I am so sorry. It goes from the west coast to the east coast. It's just like it's soaring records. It's climate change. Let's see what else is going on. This is from the LA Times. Okay, that's it for this one. Let's try the Watchers. Oh, he's back. Never mind.
Rand Paul or Cuban candidate senator from Florida. But I think that I'm really concerned about the incompetence of the Romney party, machine. I'm also concerned about the incompetence of the Republican Party to put a Mormon in as the primary candidate for a Republican Party when in their primary base is mainly conservative Christians, which some will vote for Romney while they hold their nose, and others won't. And we have the danger of getting another term of Obama, a Sunni Muslim, bisexual
that may
psychopath.
Be the whole intent with Romney's candidacy in the first place.
Yeah, it may well be. God knows what they're really up to, but it'll be very disastrous for America. And almost certainly, too, the other thing that's going to happen is the states are basically going to nullify this so-called Obamacare. So although the Supreme Court is going to call it a tax, I actually thought it was actually very clever of Roberts to call it a tax. And believe it or not, a lot of people think he's on the wrong side, that he shouldn't have done that and everything. No, he called it what it was. And by calling it a tax, you can fix the problem. Now, for example, here's my idea of healthcare. Healthcare should only be between a patient and doctor. And even if you collect the money by the state or municipality, city, town, or federal, the money would go to local authorities based on the population, and they would then have that pot of money. They would divvy it up to local hospitals so you wouldn't have duplication of equipment and supplies. And you pay the doctor when the patient would sign a check, just like a check, to say, okay, I saw Dr. X for 2 hours. Well, you get paid 2 hours, and if the patient wants to give a tip, that's up to them. You then have a rider dependent on the number of years of experience, their public service, any research they're doing or teaching at university. And the doctors, when they get too sick or old, would get a pension or would be able to work part-time.
Right. Well, what you're describing would cut out the big insurance companies and the big pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah, what you do is you get rid of big government, no coding whatsoever. You also get rid of licensure, so you basically get certified by your federal board. So if you have a federal board of surgeons, and these are not government workers, by the way, these are doctors that are actually all across the country. If you're an Alaskan surgeon and you decide to go move from Anchorage to Florida to retire and you want to scrub up 3 mornings a week, it's your damn business. You don't need to go back before a board. You're 72. You're probably could be teaching 2 or 3 different medical schools in the country, let alone having to recertify. So this idea is ridiculous. Also, there's a lot of chicanery that goes on and violation of rules of the court, rules of evidence and everything in the state medical boards. And if people know about my story, they understand just how evil they are, even playing games with medical politics to try to turn me into a political prisoner or putting me in front of Judge Maitch because of what I knew about Oklahoma City. And people think, oh, Dr. Deagle's exaggerating. It always seems to be like...
Not at all.
Some people would say Dr. Deagle has the Forrest Gump syndrome. I beg to differ. I would not have applied for this job. I think before I was made, God created me to actually be a Forrest Gump for this time, but I'm not a Forrest Gump personality. I'm not narcissistic. I just am a regular dude trying to move forward and do the right thing. One thing I do have, though, is I have no restraint in telling the truth, and I have a titanium backbone, and I will serve the Most High God and my fellow citizens and my fellow human beings on this planet before, as Robbie Burns says, I'm pulled from this mortal coil. So no, yeah, I'm a Forrest Gump, but I'm not a narcissistic maniac like Obama or these other fools. I'll just do the best I can with what I have, and, you know, I've been playing a lot of...
Obama's just an empty suit. He's just doing what he's told. That's all.
Well, yeah, people give me the Gump title because they say, well, how could you be? I had one guy in Minnesota when I traveled in 1999 with a proxy club to 42 cities in Israel. He says, one person couldn't be in all those places. I said, well, I didn't have my calendar. God did. I mean, how could I be in all those places? I said, you know, look, I said, he sent me to Colorado Springs. I worked for CCOM. I was actually a doctor under Major George Schwinder. I did the exit exam on the Oklahoma City Mirror Building. I was a doctor for the first child shot in Columbine. I worked for U.S. Space Command Strategic Defense and Star Wars. I mean, God's put me in all these places because he knew down the road, he said, you know what, Deagle's got such a big mouth. When he gets eventually a radio show, which I'm going to give him, he's actually going to tell the truth in the future, because so many other people that like to speak about prophecy, they won't take the hard knocks and the spittle when it hits the fan. They won't,
Right.
but I will. I'll take my knocks and my spittle, and I will serve the Most High God to the last drop of my blood and the last breath.
Well, you got to have a thick skin to do what we do, Dr. Bill.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why you're, as I say, when you move into this realm, I say Christianity is only for the strong-hearted and the ones who I call special or ready for special forces. Any of this milk and cookies Christianity, you don't have the truth, and you don't have the gospel, and you really don't feel saved. I'm saved, you know why? As the moment I die, I know that, like Job, that I will see my Creator. I don't have any fear of death whatsoever. I have fear, though, of living a lie. And I think people out there, if we had fear of living a lie, we would have an America that would have its own independent constitution, that would buttress up what we had originally that's being destroyed. We'd have our own banks in every state. We would have our own policy for world trade, so we wouldn't deal with the WTO to deal with China with tariffs, where they literally have multinational corporations moving our business to China. We would slap down the Japanese. We'd fly in there our Navy and so on and take care of Fukushima. We would deal with the invasion of the South China Sea by the Chinese. We would stop allowing transfer of technology to maniac countries like Pakistan, which we did years ago. We'd clean up the mess, is what we would do. But we don't. And the reason why America is going to burn in the future is because it won't repent of inaction, stupidity, arrogance, and the most important thing is they don't serve the one true God. And that's the same problem that happened in ancient Israel. The high priests were also doing ceremonies to Moloch and Baal, and that's why all our politicians are high-level Masons of one ilk or another ilk.
Well, couldn't say it better myself.
There you go. So let's get back on track. We have a couple more minutes. What's happening in terms of what's likely to happen, you think, in the timeline? I always like to get into the timeline. And where do you think we're going in the timeline for earthquakes, volcanoes, ground-level ozone, and all the other nasties? And then, John, where do you think we're going before you have to run?
Well, I think that what's going to happen is that this building seismic energy is going to be released, and when it'll be released, it'll probably be in the next 6 months sometime, and there will be a precipitating event, like you said, either a CME or the equinox or some other event, and I think we'll have another large earthquake, and I'm looking at the Caribbean. There's been a lot of earthquakes and activity, volcanic activity around the Caribbean.
Well, also in Mexico City, that volcano still, Popocatépetl earthquake, or volcano in Mexico City, is still spewing out ash. And the problem is people don't really understand that the high-level ozone is not destroyed by, I say, a brick does not float in a swimming pool. Chlorofluorocarbons never cause one drop of ozone depletion. Volcanism releasing hydrogen sulfide and sulfur dioxide does. You need three things to make an ozone layer to protect you from radiation from cosmic background microwave. You need a magnetic field, you need ultraviolet light, and you need oxygen. Our oxygen's dropping and our magnetic field's dropping, and we have more injected hydrogen sulfide and sulfur dioxide from pollution from China, but the biggest cause is volcanism under the oceans and volcanism on the land around the world, because we're heading into a volcanic cycle that's chewing up our ozone layer in the midst of a drop in world oxygen, because we're killing the oceans with pollution.
Well, he went to a commercial break. Now we can move on. Hopefully you're listening to this just like if it was a radio station. Don't just sit in front of the computer. You can start doing stuff for the beginning of next week coming up. Let's go into the watchers. That's how slow it's going. I type it in, it just, this is a high-speed internet, I guess. The Watchers watching the world. Hurricane Daniel strengthens 2 new tropical depressions forming. Also, unusual sea ice retreat in the Beaufort Sea. High levels of lead from gasoline found in Indian Ocean. Welcome to active solar July X-flare geomagnetic storming, new sunspots. Japan. Fukushima disaster was a man-made disaster and should have been prevented. SUMI experiment to study constantly changing magnetic fields on the sun. USGS reports sea level rise accelerating in Atlantic coast of North America, and that's the USGS, so heads up. And that's it for, let's see.
Effectively.
No, it's still a commercial. Let's move on to SOT.net, since we're going to have, this is going to be a long show. Hang in there. A lot of information tonight. Okay. Let's see if he's back.
Camel?
Nope, still a commercial. Deadly floods rips through Russian town. That's today. Also, let's see if I can scroll this down any faster. Flood that has claimed over 100 lives. Unrelenting heat wave bakes half the U.S., 30 dead. 5.1 magnitude earthquake strikes Dominican Republic. Again, chaos in skies over Britain. Forecasters describe horrific summer as the worst since records began. Thousands of dead fish. Heads up. Let's see where this is. Remove dead fish from Butterfly Lake in Knoxville, Tennessee. Heads up. On Monday, some 10,000 bluegills died. It's like a week ago if it's on Monday. Strange water phenomenon on Lake Ontario. Looks like a strange riptide going in a circle. Strange square cloud. Let's see if we see it. That's over Kansas. New hydrothermal vents form at Indonesia's Anak Krakatau volcano. Okay, is he back?
Titles for us
He's
if you
back.
can, that they can purchase from your website. I consider essential reading if you want to know why the climate's changing. And we combine it with the Macondo British Petroleum disaster 2 years ago. We combine it with now the radioisotopes salting our food in the northern hemisphere with radiation. You combine it with ground level ozone from the destruction of the ozone layer from hydrogen sulfide and sulfur dioxide from primarily volcanoes, but also from pollution. We've got a cornucopia of disaster that's just waiting to cause a massive famine that this year is going to really hit home. And of course, most people don't realize that an ice age is actually less survivable than a nuclear war.
Oh, yes, I would much rather have global warming than an ice age. You know, during previous periods of global warming, that's when civilizations flourished. And during times of little ice ages, that's when civilizations collapsed. I talk about that in not by fire, but by ice. And then the other book is Magnetic Reverse.
reversals and evolutionary leaps. But you know, I know that the mainstream media is talking about all of the record high temperatures in the United States, but we forget that the United States is just 10% of the globe, and not even the entire United States. I mean, 4th of July yesterday was the coldest in Phoenix in 100 years. In fact, there were many desert areas that had record low temperatures yesterday. The mainstream media is not mentioning that. Anchorage, I don't know whether people remember, Anchorage had record snowfall last year. There's an article that just came out in the Anchorage Times today that talking about Anchorage is still shoveling snow. They ran out of places to put it last year, so they had to use like dump facilities to save this, and they still have piles of snow that are 8 stories deep. It is incredible. And they figure that won't melt till October or November. Well, by then it'll be snowing again. So we're going to have the beginnings of new little glaciers right there in Anchorage.
Yeah, I think what people should realize is the glacier line was south of Seattle, Washington. It then dipped into the Midwest all the way down towards St. Louis, and then it went back up toward the Northeast. The fact is that that's the kind of thing that can happen over the next 4 to 20 years. And it'll be, as Dr. Habibul Adamazatov, Dr. Easterbrook, and others 2 years ago, June, stated in Chicago that this is a mini ice age, at least a moderate-type mini ice age minimum happening. It could be even worse, our major ice age, which occurs every 11,500 years. And we're also converging on the Milankovitch cycle, 105,000 years super cycle that causes major ice ages. Yeah, so all these cycles are converging. Plus, we have the 62 million year cycle of us moving across the galactic plane, which we have been halfway through, and we're actually going to pass the midpoint of that galactic plane, believe it or not, December 21st, 2012. And I don't believe it's the end of the world then, but I believe that the changes are going to cause major change in what's called the torsion field, which is a fifth-dimensional field, the field in which the movement of the Higgs boson, and there's a lot of talk about this now, the Higgs boson is what's called I like to refer to it as called the graviton. It's a particle with a mass of, I think it's like 1.33 GeV or electron volts, 133 GeV or electron volts, giga electron volts in terms of its mass. And the Higgs boson is a graviton. When we move through it, it changes the plasma in the stars, it changes the plasma inside the Earth, which is a nuclear reactor. Most people don't realize, like a peach. Think of the Earth as a rotating peach. It's a nuclear peach with a thin crust on it, with a thin blue line of air around it that protects us from cosmic background radiation. But we're living on a nuclear reactor. That's what the Earth is. And the giant abiotic oil underneath the crust of the Earth is actually oceans of oil created by nuclear reactions, marrying smaller hydrocarbon molecules to make bigger ones, like coal, like oil, like other hydrocarbons like bitumen. But in fact, we're living on a nuclear reactor. And when we go through these violent changes in the Earth, this is what makes continents, oceans, and this is what makes our world. We have been going through a relatively peaceful time, and now we're moving into a non-peaceful time, and the world isn't getting prepared for ice age. They're not getting prepared for a magnetic reversal of the Earth, which will cause a period of time when it will be dangerous even to be out during the day in sunlight. They're not prepared for any of these things, including famine. And our politicians are completely and utterly useless.
Well, I have to agree. I mean, we're preparing for global warming, and everything points in the other direction. You mentioned the Milankovitch cycle. There's the pacemaker of the ice age cycle every 11,500 years, and we have a major ice age or a smaller one every 11,000.
Yeah, that's the precession of the equinox cycle, right?
You know, there's another one though. Let me bring up is that we're hearing all this talk about global warming, and yet the UK Met Office says that there has been no warming in the past 15 years, and they even admit that we could be headed for a Dalton or Maunder minimum, which is a sunspot minimum, and that was the Maunder minimum. That was the coldest part of the Little Ice Age.
Yeah, good. Now, I think, our sound is much better now. I think what may be happening, too, is although people see these high temperatures right now, they don't understand it's because of the drilling at the Macondo drill site, which means the devil's food, down in the Gulf of Mexico. That's locked that heat in there, so that heat exchanger of the Gulf of Mexico connection to the loop current to the Gulf Stream is disconnected. And even the regular media now are agreeing to that. What's happening is we're going to have extremes of weather, extreme heat during the summertime, because this is a giant Vaseline consistency glob we call like a worm that's hundreds of miles long now at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, at a mile down. And they're continuing to use, by the way, thousands of gallons per day of Corexit 9500 to continue to hide the oil seeps that are coming. People don't know that they're still dumping Corexit. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're still doing it. And not only that, they are oil spill eater 2, which is non-toxic, used by 5 branches of the military, and the U.S. government won't allow it through the EPA, because the only company that makes the Corexit 9500 is Exxon, and Exxon gets a pass all the time because they get all the connections. ExxonMobil. Isn't that interesting, hey? Even though oil spill eater 2 is non-toxic, used by 5 branches of the military, and wouldn't harm the sea life, like seals coming in with basically no eyes, crabs and crayfish with all kinds of deformities, and of course the toxic effects on the nervous system, the embryonic development of human beings in the Gulf of Mexico, or the seafood they want to sell is totally safe and non-toxic. Come on down, and we love you, Taurus. Come on down.
Well, even leaving out that part of the Gulf of Mexico.
You noticed that last high, that was like the Bermuda high that was out over Bermuda, and now it started, and the gyre that came from
even leaving out that part about the Gulf of Mexico
is also a clockwise rotating gyre, and so the high started over that gyre and fed heat into it. So now we have the atmosphere feeding heat into the Gulf of Mexico. And
oh, really? Wow. So that gyre actually dumps even more heat into the Gulf. So that means the entire summer may be like a wash like this with incredible heat?
Well, they think that the high has now moved further west, and that it may start the monsoon season, and that's what they're hoping. They are getting rain in Colorado today.
Oh, good. Okay, so in other words, now it may go from being super hot to super rainy.
Yes, and that would save the corn crop.
Good. Now, the other thing, of course, the danger is if you get way too much rain, then you can wipe out your crops because you get too much rain. The problem is extremes of any kind are bad. That's one of the reasons why here in Southern California, where I live, is ideal for growing things, because the difference between summer and winter is only 12 degrees. In the wintertime, I average here are 62, and in the wintertime are 78. 62 to 74 to 76, something like that. It's 12 to 14 degrees difference. It's not much. It never gets hot. But when you have extremes, it's very, very bad for crops. They don't like 110 degrees temperature.
Well, that's right. And that's what we've been having here in the Midwest, and that's why the corn isn't growing.
Is it possible to reverse
some of the people, some of the farmers are starting to bail that up, and they use it as silage.
Bone Builder,
they
and
just say the crop is
MyCell-D3
gone.
are all bone remineralizers.
Well, in another month, it's possible that we would get a monsoon coming in through there.
Wellness products at NutriMedical.com. It supports growth.
Well, I guess I'm not the only one who has technical difficulties, right? Sounds like they bled a commercial over. Oh well. Let's see here. Well, and we're just still going here. Let's see. So, while you're listening to this, NutriMedical from Friday, and it's also The Earth Changes, and go ahead and just listen to this. And we'll go into, let's see what we can go into right now. In between commercials. Okay, let's go into the Fukushima. E-Energy News. E-Energy News, enenews.com. How slow this goes. Hate to see what the slow version is, I'll tell you that much. Let's go into Fukushima. Government report. Reactor 3 may have had second meltdown a week after first. Second meltdown. I thought it was on melt through. Japanese journalists call for evacuating children from Tokyo, causing controversy. They all knew they should have did this more than a year ago. Crap. Watch police clamp down in Tokyo streets. We're not allowed to get anywhere near protest. Gunderson. This is also today. Latest probe at Unit 1 indicates nuclear fuel has left containment. Elvis has left the room. The containment... Oh my goodness. Unit 1 indicates nuclear fuel has left containment. Remaining portion of spent fuel pool number 4 seen from Kyoto helicopter. Let's see if there's anything for tomorrow. From the U.S.
Introducing.
No, he's not back yet. It's amazing. Just amazing. Today, here's one from today, from the U.S. Here we go. Gunderson. We just tested an air filter that has highest radioactivity seen in North America after Fukushima Daiichi. Found in Seattle, HEPA filter used since 3/11. I feel sorry for the people who are breathing the air right there. I told you, you better prepare and get out of Dodge, man. They're not going to tell you. July 4th, TV. Upcoming academic studies to report on fallout situation in U.S. All along the West Coast, we're going to be seeing the news. I'm going to tell you something, all you students out there. I want you to think about it. You guys are all doing testing out there. I'm sure you're not all wrapped up and protected. All right, let's get back to the Earth changes with Dr. Bill DEAGLE, and this will probably take you out unless I can find any more news for tonight. Cat makes like weird noises sometimes. Oh, Rhodey.
And actually nullify the Obamacare. So Obama, it was a Pyrrhic victory. I think it was actually the smartest thing that Roberts did was actually to verify that it was a tax, which people revulsed at. They wanted most of the things in health care. People want affordable health care. But affordable health care will only come when you get rid of big insurance companies, big government. If you're going to collect taxes as a federal tax, and I would recommend something like a health tax, a state and federal tax, the money then goes back to local communities, then they decide where the money goes. So you don't have duplication of 5 or 6 hospitals. You pay the doctor directly when the patient almost signs a chit. They have a little time card, and the doctor does 2 hours of work, they get paid 2 hours of work. Also, if the doctor needs to hire nurses and doctors, nurses or other staff, so they don't have to, as I say, turn bolts if they're an engineer, they can hire nurses, technicians, nutritionists, and other people. Those are paid by the community. And what happens is then you have a healthcare system where you eliminate the middleman, you eliminate all the insurance companies, you eliminate big government. There's no electronic records going back to the federal government. There's no data collection. There's no coding. None of this garbage with billing, which is a tremendous expense. The average biller costs $35 an hour just to bill your things, and you only get paid a percentage of what you bill, which is ridiculous. So if we get away from that, then we have, of course, the brewing disaster in the Middle East. The amount of money has dropped by 50% going into Iran, and they have most of their oil now stored in tankers, their own tankers off the coast. So they can't even, all their facilities in the country are actually jammed to the ceiling with oil. So that means Iran is at the point now where they can't ship any more oil, and they have to distribute to China and to India oil in their own tankers, which basically means they're very limited in their capacity. They're going to start running out of staples, things like cooking oil and wheat, etc. When that happens, these 80 million people there, and it's not just Iran, it's all the standard republics around Iran and Syria. This is a war between Shiite and Sunni, which we are propelling forward toward a closure of the Strait of Hormuz. And I expect that strait closure to occur relatively quickly. Could be within days, weeks, months, but I expect it to happen before the fall. If that happens, we will be propelled toward one or two options. We either have World War III or world peace, which will be a false peace in the Middle East. That false peace will be amid a crisis where we're heading into an ice age, and we're having a destruction of the ozone layer, and we have the Fukushima disaster not dealt with, so we have radioactive food with major bursts of radiation. And by the way, the Senator Wyden, Senator, will not respond, is not responding now in 3 weeks, and we contacted him after. They were so glad to talk to me. They weren't so glad when they probably found out who DEAGLE was, and what I was asking them to do was to get commercial airliners or drones to start collecting radiation data from plumes coming from Japan, because we haven't sent a delegation of our military or our Navy or anybody to stop the damn radiation from arriving here. So on every front, everything is being done bass-ackwards, as they say. So your comments, Robert and Ann.
Well, what I look at is leaving that out, but you know, we're talking about global warming, but Argentina has just had more snow in 2 weeks than they normally get in an entire winter.
Wow.
Northern Finland had what they call freak, in quotation marks, summer snowfall. In the United Kingdom, it's been the wettest April to June ever recorded, and we're talking since 1786. In Seattle, we had the third coldest June on record. I know that other parts of the United States are hot, but there's parts in the Phoenix yesterday, the coldest in 100 years.
Oh, our weather here was so cold. I usually go in July out into the pool. It was ridiculously cold here. I couldn't even go swimming. And I thought, what the heck's going on? This is July, you know, early July. And the day before it was like marginal, but it was so cold I had to keep the propane on to get the water temperature up to where it's good.
Well, here's what I love, and I'll switch over, but in the Olympic National Forest in Washington State, aggressive goats, and we were talking mountain goats, the Forest Service has had to shut down some of their trails because the aggressive goats are going after people. Well, the reason they're down there is because of the huge snowpack in the mountains. Nobody's bothering to talk about that huge snowpack, but the goats are talking about it. They're coming down. They're coming to lower elevations in order to find food.
There's another area I want you to switch gears into. You've got to post it up on your site. It's called the ELHIERO, getting worse by the day. And you have a record here that there's massive increase in activity in ELHIERO. 1,250 earthquakes since June 24th, and that was posted up on July 2nd. I really think that if ELHIERO goes, they've already done calculations at the San Jose Tsunami Research Center in Northern California and at the Research Tsunami Center in Zurich, Switzerland. The wall of water will move at Mach 1 toward the North American coast. It'll be between 600 and 800 feet high, and it will travel between roughly 100 to 300 miles inland. That's going to be annihilation. And unfortunately, there's only an 8-hour window of warning between the time when ELHIERO goes and it actually strikes the coast. So a lot of people, if it happens in the middle of the night, will not be out of their beds by the time the tsunami strikes. And it'll be multiple waves that will be of an order of magnitude somewhere around 30 times higher than the one that struck Indonesia and killed 250,000 people. It'll be 30 times higher than that, and with thousands of times more force.
Well, if that's going at the speed of a jetliner, I just came back from Italy a month or so ago. It took 9 hours to fly from Milan to New York City. So if you're talking about a tsunami that's going to go the speed of a jetliner, you're right, 8 or 9 hours, and it's here.
Exactly. In fact, they expect it to travel at that speed, and that's calculated based on the mass of the chunk of the ELHIERO island that'll slide off and cause this giant tsunami. And what do you know about what's going on in ELHIERO? Because this thing is really, really not being reported to the regular media. They've been watching this sucker for about 30 years, knowing that the island's already split and sliding. But if it finally gives with a major push, and all it needs is a steam jet between the two rock faces from the magma and kind of pushing steam up into the rock faces so the mu or resistance between the rock faces drops, that this is going to slide and cause an unbelievably big disaster to not only Europe, to England and France, but also especially to North America. The entire East Coast going 100 miles in will be devastated.
Well, it's well known that landslides can start tsunamis, and in fact that's happened before at ELHIERO. in the Canary Islands. And the main problem with that is that the landslide will come from above the water. So when it displaces the seawater, it actually displaces the seawater, and that's what causes the tsunami. Whereas if it's an underground slide, you may not have such a big tsunami because it's not displacing the water, it's just moving it. But in this case, it would be displacing the water. It would be like, well, it would be like as if the ice shelf fell off of Antarctica. And by the way, that's another possibility. They are looking at an ice shelf that may fall into the sea off of Antarctica. Now, that ice shelf is on land. It's not under the ocean. So the whole mass of that ice shelf will displace the water and cause a tsunami that would come up probably the east coast of South America and then into the North Atlantic. So yeah, that's what the government says on Ready.gov is if something like that happens, they want the people to climb up into the skyscrapers, and they're to be 3 levels above the ground level, and they're to be less than 3. They're not to be at the very top of the skyscraper, but they want them at least 3 floors down. Now, how you're going to get people into those skyscrapers, I don't know, because most of them have doormen, and they're not just going to let anybody in.
Well, not only that, will the skyscrapers take that wall of water? Remember, every object that it picks up the tsunami is going to act as a plow, being pushed forward by trillions of tons of water. And that trillions of tons of water will snap these skyscrapers like they're toothpicks. So I don't think they're going to be able to withstand it. And it's not just like one wave. It's a surge of multiple waves that are going to occur. And each one will cause a surge that will push that water in up to 100 miles or more, depending on the altitude.
Well, that's what they are no longer following, they used to say, well, evacuate into the countryside, and the Red Cross has decided that that's just not feasible anymore. It just doesn't work.
Well, evacuate to your helicopter on the helipad on the roof of your building. If you've got a penthouse apartment and your helicopter pilot is on alert to grab you and your most precious belongings, your children and your wife, as you head toward higher ground inland at your mountain resort. How's that?
Well, I don't think that that's possible for most people. Like Obama
only billionaires.
Said, when they asked him if he wanted the new helicopter, he says, "Well, I've never had a helicopter before. I'm sure the old one will be just fine." I don't think that we're going to have helicopters at our disposal, but it will be. I'm not. Even though it's on Ready.gov, I'm not sure that the government of New York City is going to make the building owners open up their doors for the people that need to get up into the inside of the skyscrapers, and certainly the people that live there aren't going to want those refugees.
Yeah, and there is a real danger. We don't know when it'll happen, but the activity is increasing dramatically. Take care, everybody. Take action. Get prepared.
Well, not sure if that's the end of the show or not. We have to wait. We're going to have to wait and see. And that's it for my news end of it. So, pretty sure that that's probably the end. And I will upload this. Because he said, everyone take care. So I will end this right now. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. And we still have one more day left. I'll see you again Sunday. Take care.